This episode is brought to you by Ghost Patch. Ghost Patch is a law enforcement owned and operated company specializing in patches, coins, and flex shields. Quality is top priority with low prices. They always offer free design work and never charge mold or setup fees. Stop letting the big companies rip you off and check out Ghost Patch at ghostpatch.com and ghostpatchcustom.com. Now to the next story.
It's funny because I was at the very top of my career in the best job that I thought I could ever have. And I had never been more lonely, scared, or sad. And I had no idea who to talk to. And so I can remember moments of that just feeling by myself, and it just paralyzed. And then I got to a point where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to the next day. One of the very last cases I tried was, and some of you might remember this, was in Hutchins, Texas, where the little girl was locked in the closet. So I was one of the prosecutors that tried that, and that was horrific, what had happened to her. And, she had been locked in the closet for 7 years and abused and just starved to death. And that stuck with me. And, then anybody who kills a child, those all stick with you. Those autopsies, those pictures, those things, you don't forget about them. I'll never forget this. So she said, you have to get on that bench every day and realize that we're all in this together. And that just stuck with me. I mean, I looked out in the gallery and I'd see someone's family and their parents and their kids or their family members wanted to talk to me. Or, I always said, you can have them, they can come up and approach the bench and tell me what they want to say. I'm going to listen to them. And, we'll have humanity in here and treat people with respect. Maybe I always didn't follow that. I mean, I'm sure I made mistakes along the way, but I always tried my best. I did.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community. And now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at the best, knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew either victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt, April 23rd, 1910. This quote is known today as the man in the arena, and has been deciphered for decades on its true meaning, or meanings. We believe that emphasizes the importance of action and striving towards worthy goals in life over idle criticism, laziness, and inaction. But also it describes someone who is actively involved in life, facing obstacles, and taking risks despite the risk of failure. Because at some points of our lives, we all fail, And we all fall. And why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up. Today's guest is a true comeback story. This Texan went from growing up enjoying the early days of old Arlington Stadium, seeing DFW staples like Six Flags being built, and taking up her curious mind out west to Lubbock, where she got her guns up. She then joined the very rich in history Dallas DA's office and quickly gained a reputation as a ferocious prosecutor as she worked the toughest cases dealing with abused children. She then climbed higher as she became district judge at the age of 33. This star was rising. Her star would reach the 11th floor of the Frank Crowley Court Building as she became the first female elected DA in Dallas County history. And then 20 months later, she stepped down. This show prides itself on addressing mental health challenges in all walks of life and in all shapes and forms. This story is no different. We are proud to welcome former Dallas DA, Judge Susan Hawk, to the stage. Judge Hawk, it's very nice to finally meet you. Thanks for being here.
It's so nice to meet you, and I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I want to welcome on my co-host. We have Sergeant Kent Wolverton. He's back, and we actually have Danny Canetti back to the mic after episode 100. We're still getting messages about that one.
That was fantastic. I listened to it. It was great.
Well, usually we start on these of telling somebody's life story, and this isn't going to change with your episode. So, where'd you grow up? Talk about growing up in west of Dallas.
Well, I was actually, I was born here in Dallas.
Okay.
And then I moved to Arlington, Texas when I was 4. And so that was 1974, so that's going to give my age away. And it was basically, it was a small town at that point. And I always tell a funny story because I moved into a neighborhood where and since we have 3 of you, and I'm sure you're all sports fans, correct?
A little bit.
There was like 2 houses in our neighborhood, and the rest were getting built, and there was my house, and there was one other house. And so my very first friend in the world was Corby Davison. Y'all know who Corby is. It speaks on the ticket.
Yeah, we've heard of that.
Yeah, and so Corby and I grew up together, and he's always been he is by far he's my oldest friend. So I always tell this story, and it's funny because these lawyers would come up to me and ask me if I knew Corby, and it was just like they'd almost start crying when they'd hear that he's my oldest friend, that he's such a celebrity. And I'm like, Corby? I grew up with him my whole life. So that's kind of my funny story. Just moving to Arlington, we were the first 2 houses in the neighborhood, and we grew up all the way until we went to college together. So, and we still stay in contact.
Yeah, Corby the Snake Davison.
He's the man, evidently.
Yeah, well, I actually had on we've had on his co-host, Bob Sturm, on this show.
Well, you need to have Corby because it will be entertaining, I promise you.
Now that I have a connection,
I'm the connect, maybe.
All right. Maybe.
Yeah.
He might listen to this and
yes.
Never mind.
Yeah. So I grew up in Arlington and graduated from Lamar High School in 1988, and then went to TCU my first year, then graduated from Texas Tech in 1992.
So when you went to Tech, what was your major?
My major was psychology.
Okay.
So I thought that was the area that I was going to get into, which I was just drawn to it. And about 3 weeks before I graduated from law school, I got a phone call. There was a new law school that was starting in town called Texas Wesleyan University, and they were just looking for bodies to come to school there. Just, it was brand new, and it was the first year that's accredited. And we actually had a family friend that was the dean of admissions and asked, do you think Susan would be interested in go to law school? But she's got to take an LSAT. And, just miraculously in Lubbock, Texas, the LSAT was that weekend, and I literally went and sat for it. And, thinking there was math on it, if that tells you how much I studied for it, and took the LSAT. I started law school, graduated December. I started law school 3 weeks later. And it was just, I had no idea, never thought about it, didn't think I could get into law school. One of my very first classes was criminal law, and then right from that second, I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor.
What appealed to you most about that?
I don't know. It was what I was drawn to. It was what I was interested in. It was kind of a God thing. I just knew that's what I wanted to do.
So when you graduated, you began an internship with the Dallas DA?
Before I graduated, actually, because it was such a new school, and there were only mostly hiring, and that was in the 90s. So everybody wanted to be a prosecutor. So the line was long. I mean, everybody was applying at the big counties.
Why did everyone want to be a
I think
prosecutor
it
then?
was, as you can remember, and maybe you're too young, but in the 90s, I mean, it was law enforcement. I think things have evolved kind of in the criminal justice system, but that was just everybody wanted to be a prosecutor. And I think Law and Order was on TV, and it was just this exciting, I think people were thinking that's, if you were interested in that, that's the route you wanted to go. And so I knew that the only way I was going to get a job there was to intern. So I started interning. I started going to the Frank Crowley Courthouse when I was 23 years old. And I went there pretty much every day until I resigned from the DA's office when I was 46. So, I mean, it was my home. And I immediately knew once I started interning there that that was what I wanted to do.
What was the reputation of the Dallas DA's office at the time?
I think it was, at that point it was tough. It was, tough on crime. That was the kind of the sense in the criminal justice system. I was lucky though, because I had become friends with many defense attorneys that had been prosecutors for years. And I am always one to take it. I mean, I want to know. I'm very inquisitive, and I wanted to be the best that I could be at what I was doing. And they were able to give me a different perspective too on the defense side of how you can be a good prosecutor. And understanding that it was a very small bar, the criminal defense and the prosecution, that we all work together. I mean, you're going to be maybe one of your best friends that you go to trial with, and you're going to be in a very, adversarial situation, but then afterwards it's over again, and you're going to have a lot of other cases. So there was a kind of a camaraderie, I think, that existed, mutual respect that had to happen. And I just always was getting different perspectives, and I think that was what kind of formed the prosecutor that I was. I always tease in the beginning, because when you started the DA's office, you go to misdemeanor and you tried DWIs, and I was terrible. I was so terrible. I thought this was not for me. And then I got transferred into the child abuse division, straight out of the misdemeanor division. And I had interned in the child abuse division and knew that's what I wanted to do. So I stayed there for 5.5 years and tried a ton of cases.
I read that the shelf life on prosecutors in that field is very short-lived.
Yes.
Over 5 years, that's quite a while.
Well, usually you went there and a lot of people didn't stay at the DA's, because it's so intense, and we didn't have the resources available then that we do now. Like the DA's, the Child Abuse Division now has, we have the Crimes Against Children Conference, and we have the DCA's Dallas Children's Advocacy Center. All those things didn't exist then. So basically, it was one prosecutor covering 3 felony courts, hundreds of cases. And these are the worst of the worst, I would say, a lot of them. I mean, they were. And I'm trying to, I was 27. I mean, I look back now, I was 27, 28.
That's what I was just going to ask, was how old were you?
27.
You went there pretty quick. So
yeah.
young.
So I was 25 when I started. I got sworn in December 18th, 1995. Went into the Child Abuse Division when I was 27. And stayed there until I stepped down, and stay there until I was elected to district court judge. So tried all first, second degree felonies, capital murders. So I pretty much saw everything in a very short amount of time. And I've heard, we've talked, and I've listened to some of y'all's great podcasts that y'all have had, and talking about secondary trauma. None of us talked about that. None of us knew what that meant. We just kind of just kept going and never even thinking. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I just was given this gift that I can do this and it doesn't affect me, when it really did. And it took a while for me to realize how bad it did. I mean, many, many years. But, there was really not, you didn't process it like you should.
Who were some of the prosecutors you were working alongside with?
Back at that time?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, let me think. That were still there. Susie Morton, she's now a prosecutor in Fort Hood. I'm trying to think of all the different prosecutors that I work with, that they're even there anymore. Carmen White, who's a judge, Aaron Price. There was Marie Briner, who's now a family lawyer, Christine Schwann, there wasn't many guys that stayed. Robert Rogers was there for a while. I know y'all know Robert.
Yep.
He works. He was good lawyer. Ward Majan. I think some of these lawyers that I remember that I have just, we all tried cases together. I mean, we were in the trenches together, and so
that's why I wanted you to mention them.
Yeah,
because they may listen to this, and just you mentioning them is a good acknowledgement.
Yeah, and a lot of times we would pick a prosecutor that was assigned to the court that we were trying the case in,
you're the judge.
And they would pick your jury, and then and they would try the cases with you. So there's a lot of great lawyers that that I got to try cases with, and you're kind of holding each other up because it's tough. I mean, there's nothing like, I will tell you this, there is nothing like having a 5-year-old witness that the only evidence is what her testimony is, and she's having to walk down to a courtroom in front of 12 jurors and her dad or her biological father or stepfather or whoever it was and tell what happened. And that was the only evidence you had at that time. And, I think that the child abuse unit evolved under Lieutenant Bill Walsh. He started that, and he was fantastic, crimes against all these seminars. And so things started changing, and the resources that we had, especially when Dallas Children's Advocacy Center started, and we were able to have the forensic interviewers, doing the interviews, and we could watch them, and there was, kind of some safety nets in place instead of just charging these individuals and making sure. But a lot of times all you had was the word of a child. And that was it. So the stress of that alone, knowing that if you messed it up or you didn't, was going to decide whether or not someone was going to walk back out the door and they were going to go home to the potential perpetrator. So it was difficult.
Did you even have time back then to think about working for a different county or doing anything different?
No, I never wanted to. I mean, that was my home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you basically grew up in this area.
I mean, I grew up in
law school here.
Yeah, I grew up at Frank Crowley Courthouse. I mean, I say that. I mean, I did. I was 24 when I started and 46 when I left. I went there every day, in between. So when I left, it was very sad for me. Yeah. So.
Was Bill Hill? Was he the DA?
No, John Vance was the DA then, and then Bill Hill was the elected DA after that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Were you still in child abuse, or were you a judge by then?
When Bill Hill, I was in child abuse.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I got promoted to there was a position that opened. It was a grant position, and it was for a chief spot, a deputy chief spot, and it was to take on. So then we had hundreds of backlog cases that were not being tried because we actually had we had a child abuse court only. And I volunteered to take. Of
course you did.
I wanted it. I mean, I went after it, and I volunteered to take these 100 cases that were backlogged, that were I think 3 years or older, bond cases, and I disposed the majority of them, and then I tried 24 of them in 1 year.
You got 23 convictions.
I did. I know the back that we tout conviction rates and we talk about that. I really don't look at that so much anymore. I do know that I did look at the cases that needed to get dismissed or pled out, and
why don't you look at convictions that way anymore?
Well, I don't. I think touting conviction rates. I think our job as the DA or as prosecutors is to seek justice, not just to go in there and win. And you're not going in there just to get a conviction. But those were cases that needed to be tried. And those were, I believed, based on the information at that time and what I knew at that point, that those were cases that needed to be tried. I wasn't scared to go to trial. I just, I felt the most comfortable in the courtroom. I didn't in the beginning. This was just because this was something I really cared about. So I've learned something about myself that I have to have some passion in there to, that's important to me. It has to mean something to me, and it has to kind of serve a bigger purpose than just myself. And I realize that.
Are there any cases that kind of stuck with you from the child abuse?
Oh God,
I'm sure there's several.
Yeah, there's several. There's the resiliency of children is unbelievable to me. The things that they would have to walk into a courtroom and say, and then they'd go out and they'd just start playing in the hall, and and I remember a defense attorney argued in one of his arguments, well, there's no way that's true. I just saw that kid out in the hall, and she was running around like nothing was wrong. And I just thought, that's not what it's about. Their resiliency was just unbelievable. I did have one case where it was terrible, where the defendant was pro se. He was a biological father, and he had two daughters, and they had to get on the stand to testify, and he cross-examined them. So as you can only imagine how hard, they did a great job. I mean, it was a horrible, situation, worst case scenario you could think of as probably the trauma that caused later on in life. But he received 2 99-year sentences on that, and so that was, they were able to get some closure. I also, one of the very last cases I tried was, and some of you might remember this, was in Hutchins, Texas, where the little girl was locked in the closet.
Yes.
Lord. And it's come out several different ways because things have happened since then. So I was one of the prosecutors that tried that, and that was horrific, what had happened to her. Barbara Atkinson, I tried the mom. And, she had been locked in the closet for 7 years and abused and just starved to death. And, the thing that stuck with me the most out of that is she was locked in this closet, and then 2 feet away was this refrigerator that was stocked to just full-on stocked with every type of food you can imagine. And they were starving this kid, this little girl 2 feet away in a closet. And they would put like deodorant things in there because it smelled so badly. And she would try to eat the deodorant gel because she was starving. So that stuck with me. And, then anybody who kills a child, those all stick with you. Those autopsies, those pictures, those things, you don't forget about them.
Yeah, the secondary trauma.
Yeah.
You touched on that, and it is talked about more now, even in the first responder world. So a lot of the detectives, they're not necessarily boots on the ground, see it initially, but they get the case. They have to pore over the body cams. They have to look at the crime scene photos. They have to interview. And I know a lot about the FIs and child abuse unit. The FIs have to sit and watch the forensic interviews of these kids, and then. Yeah, there's a lot to absorb like a sponge after the fact.
Yeah.
You said you got more comfortable in the courtroom when you found your passion in there. Did that help you create the style that you tried to use, and what was that style?
I learned early on that you can't just do a bare bones case of it. Like, just put on the child. You have to put on everything that you have and let the jury decide. Because so many times, I think I learned the hard way. You'd have defense attorneys stand up and say, well, you never heard from this police. I just put on every police officer that was involved and every detective. You never heard from the detective. Even though there wasn't anything but that maybe some other prosecutor might not think was relevant, it was always diffusing that argument. And I found that when I did that is when it made the big difference of just making sure I left nothing out. And, I tried my best all the time. Of course, I'm sure I made mistakes along the way and learned from them, tried to. But I realized in those types of cases, it was so important not to leave anything out, even if you thought it was not, going to be an issue, because then in closing argument, it could get slammed down your throat from the defense attorney. Then the jury will ask, well, why didn't you bring that? And, those things can be considered reasonable doubt. So things have changed too now. The law changed in 2012 because when I tried cases, you could only, during the guilt innocence phase of the trial, only put on the complainant. And now the law's changed that if there is another child victim out there, they can put that victim on during the guilt innocence phase as well if the judge thinks that it's relevant. So that makes it even more hard, more difficult for the defense because, it's the propensity. If he's done it once, that means he's done it twice. I mean, I don't know. It's when I was trying cases, that was not the law at the point. So we could only put on that one complaining witness, and then if there was any other alleged victims, then that was included in punishment.
And that changed in 2012?
I think it was 2012. Okay. I'm not positive, but I think there was a change in the legislature. So. But the judge still has a discretion to decide whether or not it's too prejudicial than probative let in. So,
we briefly touched on the secondary trauma that you could experience, especially in that role.
Yeah.
And we also mentioned that we didn't really care about it back then, right? We're so busy in the weeds that we can't see past
We
it.
don't even, we don't even recognize it or know it's happening or acknowledge it. That's a better word.
In hindsight, how would you handle that, and what would you recommend people do to take care of themselves?
I didn't. One thing years of therapy have taught me: if you take care of everybody else, you don't have to take care of yourself, right? So, that was kind of my way of just ignoring my own issues or ignoring things that were going on with me and just pouring everything into that. And then, my excuse would be, well, I have a really hard job. Sorry. So everything else kind of fell by the wayside that shouldn't have, things that are very important. And so I know that I would have gone to therapy and continue to process these things and not just think that I could do it all. There certainly wasn't, thinking that I was special and I was the one that could do it all. That's not the case. It doesn't work like that. At some point, if it's years later, months later, for me, it was years later, it's all going to break.
Yeah. There's only so much you can jam into that box before it spills
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes you develop this, this chip on your shoulder or this hardness about you, kind of thinking that and that's not the person I want to be. And I think I started doing that. And you kind of lose a bit of yourself when you do that.
Definitely.
It's like looking at your mind as a puzzle, and then one piece disappears, a second piece, a third, and then a 10th piece. 10 piece disappears over years, and then before you know it, there's a lot of gaps there and a lot of holes.
Well, and then you're filling those holes with external validation or other things that you were thinking, oh, well, this, that, or the other. That makes me feel complete, when it's none of those things that are making you feel complete are you. It's something else.
People
You're
do that with
depending
social
on
media now.
Yeah, well, I didn't have, thank
Yeah.
God, social media didn't exist back then. But, those things were validating me. Awards, youngest, first, all that stuff, that means nothing at the end of the day. So not great at relationships, probably, like I should be. I recognize those things now. So, but, just letting your job define you and define you in every single way, that's not happiness for me.
No, it is. A lot of people find validation in that, and they point to success as they have a successful life in mind and them as a person, but inside they're just like the crying clown inside there crying.
Yeah, I always knew something was missing. I could feel it. Like I knew that I was, I was doing this, but I kind of felt like I was, why do I feel this way? There's something just not right, and I couldn't. I just kept pushing through.
So you just push the foot on the pedal and just move forward. Yeah.
So you said not good at relationships. So what is personal life like then back then? Are you single? Do you have a support system?
Am I single now or was I single then?
At the time, yeah.
Oh, I was married and divorced and, just kind of, I married a defense attorney. I know that's cliche, but I did. We were together and we had an amicable divorce. He's a nice person, but I put my job first, always. All my friends were at the courthouse. So my whole life was the courthouse, instead
Weird.
of having.
I don't know what that would be like for us.
Y'all probably do that
We're
too.
so different here in the police department.
No, really, right. And I had great. When I say I grew up there, I did. I became an adult there.
Your family.
It's my family, and I was in front of really good judges that taught me. Judges that had been prosecutors and defense attorneys, and I was able to watch them and know what kind of judge I wanted to be. I had really good defense attorneys that I tried cases against, and I saw what they did, and telling me that it's never worth, the value of a case is never worth, how your reputation as a lawyer, and just getting these seeds of information. I was lucky to have those opportunities because I think it did make me a good prosecutor. I think I was tough. I was firm. I was fair too. I know I was fair. And I believe so. But I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared to go in the courtroom and try a case. And I think that only happened because I developed confidence over time.
It sounds like that was your comfort zone.
Yeah. The courtroom's always been my comfort zone. I know most people are like, what? Yeah, but the courtroom has always been my comfort zone.
So it was a couple years ago that you were thrown into the spotlight. And I remember confidence was never lacking. Like all the photos they had of you and, magazine covers and newspapers, the confidence that came out in those photos was always there. It was never a question of, is she aware of who she is and what she can do?
Yeah. Well, that's not, but the highlights, the headlines were a little different.
They got a little different towards the end there. But
it's funny you say that because I look back at those pictures now and I can honestly say I was a shell of myself at that point, a shell of a human being at that point. Now, pictures before that, I can look and see, and like I can look at now at pictures and say, that's me. But back then I was just trying to get through each day the best I could. And maybe I could stand up there and smile but what was happening on the inside was just cratering.
Talk about being comfortable in the courtroom. You took a next step and you ran for district judge. Can you talk about that?
I did. So that was after I tried that really, the big case, and my name had been in the paper a lot. And, I always knew I wanted to be a judge, always. But I did not think it was going to happen at 31. That was young. And there was an incumbent that was running from a county court, and it was a district court bench. And I remember lawyers saying to me, you're too young, run for a county court, then you have to run for a district court bench. And I had someone that I respected said, no, you're not. You run for a district bench. Why would you do that? You do it. Just do it. And he said to me, and when you decide to do it, you spend every single day knowing that you're going to win it. And it just resonated with me. I was like, okay, I will. And I just kind of went full on like I do and campaigned. And I had a very contentious, it was a primary, and this is when everybody was Republican. It's a primary race that was every single night you go, and then for months, for a year. And then I won the primary. I was the underdog, of course. And then that was just when things were changing in Dallas County as far as the tide was changing as far as Democrat, Republican. And I did have a Democrat opponent too. So I had a primary and a general election and got through. And then I was elected 2002. So I took the bench January 1, 2003.
And how old were you when that happened?
When I actually took the bench, I was 33.
Okay.
Yeah. 32, 33. I don't ask me math. I don't know.
The youngest
elected, I think, at that time. Yeah. But, I think also it's another thing. I'd only tried child abuse cases. I've only been doing the worst of the worst. So when I got on the bench and there was all these other state jails and these other cases, I was like, I had a different perspective, I think. I looked at it differently. Not everybody was going to go to jail. Not everybody was a lifelong criminal. Not everybody had, they were people that were a lot of times, as y'all know, are good people making bad decisions. So.
And that's a pretty mature decision. 33 is not young.
No.
But in your career of being a prosecutor, as police officers, we get into arrest culture and we want convictions. And like you said, now the conviction is not the big deal. It's the justice.
Yes.
But at 33 to still realize that there are people that are just caught in a bad circumstance, I think that's a pretty worldly view at that point.
Well, I think I also too, I just kind of had empathy for it from the beginning. Maybe because I always thought, for the grace of God go I. Maybe I would have been one bad decision away at some point in my life, if I was born into a different circumstance, right? I certainly didn't think. I think also too, never think that you're better than they are as humans. I had a judge, and I don't know if she remembers saying this now, but she was also a justice, but she was a district judge at the time, Lana Myers, and she said to me, I'll never forget this. So she said, you have to get on that bench every day and realize that we're all in this together. And that just stuck with me. I looked out in the gallery and I'd see someone's family and their parents and their kids, or, I usually didn't let kids in the courtroom because that was something that I was strict about. I didn't like when people brought their children in to try to use as that was one thing I did not like. But I did, if their family members wanted to talk to me, or, I always said, you can have them, they can come up and approach the bench and tell me what they want to say. I'm going to listen to them. And, we'll have humanity in here and treat people with respect. Maybe I always didn't follow that. I mean, I'm sure I made mistakes along the way, but I always tried my best. I did.
That was the 291st District?
291st District Court, yes. And so the judge prior to me had been on the bench for 20 years. And this was a culture where, everybody was a Republican, and it was, nobody was changing. The political situation, which I wholeheartedly believe, and I say this in every interview or anybody I talk to, I do not believe politics belong in the criminal justice system. I think it's a nonpartisan issue. The fact that we have to choose and make that decision, I disagree with. So
let's talk about mental health court.
Okay.
Tell us about it. How that was
Well,
expanded, what it was, and how it expanded.
And that was, I have to say, of all the things I've done in my career, probably most proud of, honestly, or most just was such a incredible experience for me, and taught me how to be a better person as well as a better judge. There was, Crusoe had drug court then, and that was very successful. But the specialty courts, as you know, everybody has specialty courts all over the place now, and that's a new thing that's fantastic. But they didn't exist back in 2003. So there had been one that was, Judge Kristen Wade was doing a misdemeanor mental health program, and she was doing a great job. But there was not a felony mental health program yet in Texas that was taking on high-risk offenders. So I jumped at the opportunity to preside over it. And it was aside from my day job, my regular job. And it was the highest risk offenders on probation. So we let people that had 3G offenses, and they were, but they were all had mental health issues, been diagnosed with substance abuse issues, so co-occurring disorders. And they would come into my program for a year. We had a full team. They all had case managers. I had a forensic psychiatrist that came to every staffing to teach me how to know what to do. As Metricare LifeNet. When we had North Star, I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, all the different agencies. And we named it Atlas, and acronyms in the mental health world, Achieving True Liberty and Success. I love it still to this day. I love that name. Someone else came up with it, but I love it. And they would come and see me every week. So there's a judicial monitoring. We had staffing every Monday. So we had case managers, the public defender, a forensic psychiatrist, myself, and it was probably 10 to 12 of us. And we would staff each case every week on what they were doing. We gave them, a list of things they had to do. Number 1, take their medication. Number 2, not get rearrested. Number 3, we found them housing, transitional housing. We slowly reconnected them with their families. We got them jobs, GED, vocational training. Some of them couldn't do those things, but we got their SSI in a safe place. And it was something, I presided over that for 7 or 8 years. And we actually had a University of North Texas came in and did a study, and they followed my individual. So we had a big graduation after a year. Everybody'd come in, we'd have cake and pizza, and they'd wear hats and gowns, and we'd take pictures, and they brought their family. And it was always one of the best days of the year. It was every quarter. They were usually with me for a year. So, they became like my family. If you can understand, I saw these people every week. If were doing good, it'd be every 2 weeks. And then we kind of slowly stepped them down. But, just watching a individual who was continually being incarcerated because of their mental illness and not being treated right and not having a proper diagnosis, and just no one that really ever cared about them, see them come on the other side of that and call their child that they hadn't talked to in 20 years. They come to graduation, and just it was always my favorite day.
And to see a progression of that person.
Yes. And, it wasn't always successful. They were with, so when there was a study done, and I actually have it published on my website because it was a published study through UNT. We showed that the individuals, they followed them for 2 years after they graduated. And we had like a 60-something% reduction in recidivism, which is huge.
That is big.
And the ones that didn't even graduate, that just participated, had like 47% reduction. Just to be a part of something, they never knew that they had a judge that, a lot of times in the settings they were in, someone that actually really cared. And it was, so that's why when I really saw that there was such a better way of doing things than putting someone in jail for 180 days or 2 years in the pen and they're back out, with no services, no resources. They're going to recommit an offense, and it's going to be next thing 25 to life. And, I just saw that there was really firsthand that it worked. These things worked. These programs worked. But yeah, you had to have all the pieces in place. And I had a great relationship with probation. They were very involved, and they helped me so much with that. Teresa Williams was the probation chief at that time. I think she is now. Teresa May, she's down in Houston. Always very supportive, giving me the best probation officers to work with them. So, we turned my court, where the defense workroom was actually there at my court was the probation department for my people. So I always call them my people because I felt like they really were my people. They were my family that I was with. So it was a great thing.
Yeah, I'm sure that was just seeing the revolving door.
Yes.
Somewhat stop in a lot of cases because, yeah, you're right. Throwing somebody in jail for 180 days, they get out. The recidivism rate, it's still very high, but having programs like this that gives another option for that, because everything's a case-by-case
Absolutely.
basis.
And it didn't work for everyone, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people being incarcerated doesn't work.
No. We're housing people in the penitentiary. For me, especially mental health issues or things, it does not work. Building more prisons does not work. And so I noticed that immediately when I took the bench. I was like, well, what is these people? They're just coming back and forth and back and forth. And there has to be something different that we can do. So when this presented itself to me, that's why I thought, well, I absolutely want to do it.
And there was no other counties doing this in Texas at the time?
At that time, I think that this was the first felony program. I think, then Harris County kind of started doing it. I became involved with the special needs offender program down in Austin. I testified in front of the legislature. I became involved with the criminal justice division with them. So, yeah.
Did they start using what y'all had going as a template or a guide to build theirs?
I think so. And then,
Probably.
we kind of, ours was trial and error though. We knew it worked. And in the beginning, we were doing it on the tail end. Like we were, doing it. Okay, this is the last stop before you go to the pen. You come into this program. And then I had a probation officer come in. He's like, you need to be doing this on the front end. So we started making it, instead of being before someone gets revoked and they get in the program, now we started doing it at the front end of their probation as a condition. And the success rate was so much higher at that point.
Well, everything you start new is trial and error. And you just feel, okay, this doesn't work. Let's take that off and let's add this.
Yeah.
Like something as simple as moving at the beginning of the.
That made a huge difference because we're getting them right before they're about to fail. Why don't we get them in the beginning and set them up for success? So.
At least have the option.
Yes.
For success.
Yeah. You have something. He's smiling.
Yeah.
You're a small person. I mean, physically, you're a small person. But what I'm hearing in all this is you're such a large person that you have your own mass, that you are generating your own gravity and creating your own ecosystem is what this all kind of sounds like.
I don't even know what that means.
Well, it's just like you said, you lived at Frank Crowley Courts, and I'm hearing it. I'm hearing that you were the presence at Frank Crowley Courts for so long that you pulled people in with you to work, and you created this whole system. And
I mean, I just, it was what I was meant to do, and so that's why, when it came to a crashing halt, I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah,
it was so devastating. But I am a big thinker for sure. I do overthink. Maybe I got to sometimes bring it back in.
You're in a room full of overthinkers.
Yeah, I mean, I just I can't think of just I'm not gonna. I can never just turn and burn cases and get clients and plead them out and I'm done. It's got to be bigger than that. So it's just that's.
Well, there is an energy with. I mean, Danny, there's an energy here with her and everything she's talked about career.
Yeah, beyond just being polished as a speaker and the experience from the courthouse and being in the public view, but like I said, there's more to that. It's like you have your own mass that you're creating your own gravity, and as a result, it is creating its own ecosystem.
So Danny Canetti,
perspective. I think that might be the best compliment I ever got, or maybe not.
No, it's a compliment.
It is the best compliment for sure.
All right, you had. I read somewhere that you always dreamed of being the
I did.
DA of Dallas County.
And I kind of always knew, just for whatever reason, because I haven't always been that. The stars just always lined up for me where I knew the next thing I wanted to do, and it's like I knew when I was a prosecutor, I wanted to be a judge. And then when I knew, but I remember being 25 or 26 and I was somewhere and I was like, you know what? I think I might be the district attorney one day. I mean, where this came from, I don't know, because it's not like I was confident in every area of my life. Of course not. But I remember saying that, and then the opportunity presented itself in 2000 and I believe it was 12. And and I loved being a judge. I loved being on the bench. I loved presiding over the Atlas program. I miss, that's the thing. I miss that, of course. I do not miss politics. And I will not get involved in politics ever again. So let me just put that disclaimer out there right now. But I do miss that. But I did make this pretty big, huge leap to resign from the job I loved and decide to run as for DA. And one of the big reasons for me was seeing how well Atlas worked. I thought, this is so great. I mean, we could bring a whole kind of diversion and rehabilitation program into the DA's office and create these things and just do things different. So,
did you feel you were leaving it in good hands though? Whenever you resigned the position, did you feel confident that what you helped build and grow was going to be picked up and continued?
I didn't know.
Okay, fair.
I didn't know. So, but I do know this. All of a sudden, there was a lot of judges doing these specialty courts, which was fantastic. And I think, if that's it, then that's in good hands, right?
Yeah,
things that didn't even exist. I mean, there was, prostitution court, there was veterans court, there was DWI court. Now there's all these things that exist. And I think that's great. So yes.
A lot of spiderwebbed.
Yes,
no.
I think so. I think that's the way it worked around the nation. I think that was a trend. That was what was happening in criminal justice at that time. Nothing to do with
evolution.
Yeah, nothing to do with me. It was just happening. So
politics. How was
do we really want to talk about that?
It's nasty. No, I don't blame you for never wanting to get back in that. The campaign. How did that go?
Well, I think the thing that for me, I ran first time as a Republican. I'd never been to a Republican event or I was involved in politics. I wanted to be a judge. I wanted to, do a good job. And then when I got on the bench the first time was the first term. So that was 2002, 2006. Do y'all remember? I don't know if y'all, were you born yet?
Oh, yeah.
Where every single Republican lost their job in one night. I mean, the whole county swung. I mean, it didn't matter who you were because they just put everybody lost their job and the whole county swept Democrat. So, that was, and there was 3 or 4 judges that out of, there's a lot of them that didn't have opponents and I was one of them. So I got to keep my job. And, which I was very blessed and very happy. And then I, at that point, switched parties, and I ran as a Democrat the second time, and was reelected. And so I know that causes a lot of tension amongst people, but I just have always maintained. I mean, my job as a judge is to follow the law. I don't legislate from the bench. I mean, I have the same judicial, philosophy. I'm still going to do my mental health program. There's nothing politics isn't going to change that. I mean, unfortunately, we have to get reelected. So that's why I'm so adamant about it. Just criminal justice is not a political situation. It should be nonpartisan from both sides because just we're trying to make sure the right thing happens and the right people,
Not for an agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So during the campaign for the Dallas DA's office, it was Craig Watkins was the incumbent 2-time, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, so he was pretty entrenched as the Dallas DA at the time. and that was your opponent.
It was. It was.
How did that go? I mean, we know you, but as far as like you getting immersed into that type of,
you have to realize there's people all over the country who listen to this.
Yeah.
So things that aren't said, maybe people in Dallas know. Definitely the police department knows.
Yeah.
But even our own Dallas residents may not know the state of the DA's office and Craig Watkins.
Yeah,
and
you know, and I am not going to disparage him in any way whatsoever, because I mean, it just he created some good things. He did. I mean, number one being the conviction integrity unit. He brought in really smart people to work with him, which I think, you know, there was really like Terry Moore and Michael Ware, those guys that are just really good, smart people that were able to come in and do that. I felt like that, you know, that was an opportunity for me that I could bring something. The police department supported me. Mm-hmm. They were very supportive. And so that was another situation. Then I switched and I ran as a Republican.
Yeah.
And once again, though, I always said it doesn't matter. I mean, this is we're talking about criminal justice and what can I do, and these are things I want to do. And I had every good intention, every good belief and love for what I had done so far up to that point, bringing that to the DA's office. So
when you won,
did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So you won. I mean, it was a slim.
Yeah, and absolutely. I was, I'm always underestimated. I think.
Yeah, underdog.
And I'm always the underdog, but it was a moment I'll never forget. You know, talk about the man in the arena. You know, your highest achievements, those moments that you have. That is one of those. I've also had the face down ones too, but I do. Those are one of my highest achievement feeling. It was fantastic. Probably my biggest regret is not being able to complete that term and what I started.
It's a big achievement to beat a 2-time incumbent DA that was very well known, and also you ran in a party that the county had it switched, and that flip flops every city, USA, that happens. But first ever female elected DA in Dallas County history.
Yeah, and that's another thing, is being the first female, and then as you know, and everybody knows, I stepped down because of having severe mental illness, depression, anxiety, just had to, and so it's. It still hurts. It still stings. It's still, a huge regret. But I do not regret asking for help and getting the help, because I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't done that.
Judge, you just won first week. Talk about that. Talk about that feeling when you found out you won.
I remember that night because it was close. There was, if you bet, just the numbers and looking at it, and it was one of the best nights of my life, hands down. It was an incredible feeling.
You finally accomplished what you early 20s.
It's just, it was so. It's funny for me because everybody else doubted that I was going to win, and I, for some reason, in my heart or my gut, I just knew I was going to, and it's not an arrogance thing. I think I just learned to be successful and really just to start believing. And I believed in it so much. And I believed in what I wanted to do that it was just, I believed that it was going to happen.
Confident.
It was just something that overcame me, and I knew that it was going to happen.
The police department greatly supported you.
They did.
During that time.
They did.
Because we wanted you to, we wanted a new direction in the city.
I think the department, was very much behind you, but we all had this kind of underlying sense that you weren't going to win as well, just because things are going to continue like always.
Yeah.
And then when you did, there was a lot of excitement.
Yeah, I think that's always when I seem to do my best, when everybody underestimates me.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I just kept going every day, and I had people were telling me to do this and to do that from all sides. Take it. I'd have different people tell me, no, you need to do this, and no, and I just said, I'm sticking to what. This is what I'm sticking to.
That was your vision.
That was my vision, and it's going to run this thing as nonpartisan. I mean, I'm going to both sides and talking about what I'm doing, not just all Republican. And I just stuck to that path.
What was the biggest challenge starting off, and when you getting over the elation of winning and then getting there? What was the biggest challenge initially?
Well, I think there was trying to get all the people in the right spots in the right places, and there's very good people that are in the exact same spots today that do such a good job that we promoted, and they're still there doing a good job. So I think that was one of the most important things, and also just looking at things. What were the trends in the country? What DA's offices? It was important to me to look at what they were doing that was really successful, and how could we implement those things into our office, and just not be business as usual. I really try to change the culture, talk about provide support for the new prosecutors and what we expect, and we're not touting conviction rates, and we're not touting just putting people in jail. We want to do seek justice and make sure that's the first and foremost thing that we're doing in each case.
I'm going to seek justice, but also just trying to curb recidivism.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't working. We keep just doing the same thing over and over again.
It's still not.
Yeah, I know. It's an ongoing conversation that hopefully will evolve and keep evolving, but I'll talk about it all day long. So.
Well, we have an open mic.
Yeah.
So you had a vision, and as it was unfolding, can you just talk about the biggest challenge that you saw? And was there any changes that you initially had as a vision, but then you realized, well, this isn't going to happen?
Well, I kind of had this naive thought that I could do it on my own, which was my fault. I thought that you just can't do that in that kind of organization, and I probably could have developed some thicker skin earlier on and realized that people are going to be, no matter what you do, someone's going to be mad. And that bothered me. I mean, it affected me, and, worry about that. And so, just looking back, there's things I could have done different. But, I believed in what we were doing, but it came to a point for me that the pressure was, it's unlike any kind of pressure you can feel in a job like that in this big of a county. And I was, we were it was important to me to have all the police chiefs, we'd have breakfast for all the police chiefs to communicate and get to know each other. Then it was important to me to be out in the community. And then I was going out and doing all these town hall meetings. And I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I do remember
that was
that.
Something new. And, I'd go out there and just, kind of lay my heart and soul out there. And thinking that those things could make a difference. Maybe they did a little bit. A lot of times it incited just some conflict, and it's trying to satisfy everyone, and you just can't do it that way.
No, you've been out and engaging with the community that you're serving. That is important.
Absolutely,
Did you take that approach?
That was my favorite part.
Yeah,
I loved going out, and I loved town halls, and I loved talking to people. And that was my that was my favorite part. I mean, I was gone every day doing things like that, and I thought that was important.
You did that as well during the campaign to win, yeah, and that was important. That was big for you to go out and do that. You were everywhere. We were seeing you all over the place.
Yeah.
In Dallas County.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the amount of energy that takes, and the amount of you're giving your soul kind of away. You're not giving let me take that back. You're not giving your soul away, but you're just giving so much of yourself. And when you're not taking really good care of yourself at the same time, then it's not going to last very long.
No, it's very tenuous.
Yeah.
Grasp on.
Yeah.
You talked about early on working the child abuse cases and just all the secondary trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this new role had a lot of probably secondary trauma that you had not been exposed to or prepared for.
And as you know, when it came down to it, and a lot of people were asking for me to step down or wanting me to step down, and then there was a suit that was filed to remove me from office. If y'all remember that as well. And it was, I don't think that it was. It's funny because I was at the very top of my career in the best job that I thought I could ever have. And I had never been more lonely, scared, or sad. And I had no idea who to talk to. Or really, I just didn't. And so I can remember moments of that, just feeling it's by myself. And it just paralyzed and thinking here I am at the very top that you could ever ask for. And someone even said to me, well, what do you complain about? You chased this. This is what you wanted. And I just remember thinking that just kind of, and then I got to a point where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to the next day.
Can you describe that?
I've had thoughts, I had depression and anxiety most of my life. And now I described it as angst pretty much. I lived in a perpetual fight or flight. And I think that's what made me successful in many ways, because I was always just ready to, go to the next thing. And it never, when you live in that state for so long, I never really slept. I mean, I kind of had a, like a low level sleep every night.
That was your baseline.
Yeah. And it's what made me great in the courtroom. And it's what made me a great trial lawyer and great going out there and going for it. But it's not a way to sustain any kind of happiness or joy or peace in your life. And that just got depleted. And so it finally got depleted. And I just remember the day I was sitting in this lonely town home by myself. And I just thought, I can't imagine ever feeling this like I had felt that day or was feeling. And I really did not know if I was going to be able to make it to the end of the week. I say next day, but each day it was at that point. And I think that was the first time I asked for help, because I knew it was not going to end good.
How hard was it for you to ask for help? Especially being in such a extremely high profile position.
Yeah, I mean, there was already so many things being said and so many headlines out there. I mean, when you read a headline, is Susan Hawk too crazy to keep her job after you've done all the things that you've done in your career? And people are writing that and without any kind of sensitivity that I'm a human being, and I was suffering, and it was, those kind of things, and people were laughing and all that. And, looking back, and I want to say this, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I have no hard feelings, because things were not being talked about back then. And I was not acting myself. I mean, I was not myself, and I was, my behavior was concerning, and people didn't know how to respond. And so I don't hold that against them. I really don't.
Was there a precipitating event that made you tip? Have you identified something, or is this just culmination coming to a head?
I remember, I'd already gone into treatment a couple of times, and as we all know, and this, I really, the way my big brain works is I was a believer, like, I'm just going to go into treatment, and I'm going to be the one person that can beat depression in this universe. And I wholeheartedly believe that, which is so stupid, because you don't conquer it. This is not a disease I will ever conquer, overcome, get over. It's something I manage and treat always. And it's something that I always have to, look at, what are my triggers? What are things that are happening? The only person I can control is myself. Don't let what the outside influences do. But I do remember the very last moment when I was in a meeting, and I was with Messina, and I just remember thinking, and we walked out, and I looked at her, and I said, I am not okay. I cannot do this. I'm not going to make it. And so she immediately drove me to my psychiatrist. I had a psychiatrist then, because I had been in treatment and had a psychiatrist and therapist. And I went straight to my psychiatrist, and then he checked me into UT Southwestern. And and I went into UT Southwestern at that time. And I resigned, and I talked about this when I talked to the Dallas Morning News, so I'm not ashamed of this, because when you speak it, it has no power over you anymore, right? I resigned from the district attorney's office in the UT Southwestern psych unit. Imagine that. So I was so, it was, I didn't know what else to do, but I did always say that when I knew that I could not do this job anymore, after fighting to keep it through a court case, after fighting with the media, after, going to the media, going to treatment several times, I said, if I cannot do this job, I promise you I'll step down. And there was absolutely no way I could do the job anymore. And for me, that it had pretty much accomplished everything that I had set out to do, for me to get to that point, it was life or death.
And you said that you thought that you could be the one person.
Oh, yeah. It's ridiculous. I know.
Well, no, it's not, because you've been that one person your entire life up to this point.
Oh.
Right? And trust me, everybody that goes through it also thinks, I'm going to be the one that breaks it, right?
Yeah.
But you've had such a high level of success your entire life up to when you decided, I can't do this anymore, right?
Yeah.
That is a big realization, but your constant success has led you to that point.
Yeah.
Your whole life has been obstacles, and then you get over them. Or not only that, you smash them.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we're going to assume that, this is just another one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that Sharon Grisby, when she read she spent a lot of time when we talked a lot.
Sharon's great.
Oh, she's great. She's so fair. And the way she put it, I mean, it's like a little mental health tune-ups. I can run in, run out, and that'll be great. I never knew it was going to get to a point that it would. You can't recover when you're as sick as I was and I went into treatment. You got to take you have to have an aftercare program. You got to take weeks and months. It's like a brain injury that you have to treat. And the first treatment I went into, when I went into Mennegar, I left Mennegar. I went to the house, and D Magazine was waiting for me, and I did an article that night. I volunteered to do it. I mean, this is me. This is all on me. I'm not blaming them at all. The next day I went to work, and then I had every news agency that was sitting out the door, and I did 6 or 7 interviews just to prove to everybody that I was going to be okay. And I was trying to prove so hard that I was not sick, or I was not crazy, or I was not crazy, but I was sick.
But you're a conqueror, right? That's what you do, is you beat the odds on everything. So that's...
Yeah. And I can say to this day, sitting here, because that was 2016, and now we're 2024. I haven't conquered it, but I am definitely on the other side of it. So
that treatment, starting off, basically, and you say you have to putting a Band-Aid on something going, that does not work, and that doesn't work if you have you tear up your knee. You have to go to a surgery, and then there's a long recovery and aftercare for the healing process. How did that healing process look for you? And I've read the article. It's very great, extensive article. How did that look for you, of peeling off all the layers and starting over?
Is this after I resigned?
Yes.
Yes. So when I resigned, it took me it took years. So, because I will say that I didn't leave my house for a year. And then I saw my therapist 3 or 4 times a week. I saw my psychiatrist. I was so heavily medicated because they were so worried that I was not, that I was going to take my own life. And that was a real thing, and my family did not understand it. I mean, my mom was like, you have everything going for you. What are you complaining about? And that was the way they dealt with it, because she didn't understand. And a lot of people, that's what they said. And then, the worst thing that I heard that really just incited me is she's trying to get attention. I mean, are you kidding me? Do you think I wanted that kind of attention? I mean, it was terrible. Or then it was some kind of political ploy. I was like, I could barely even hold my head up, so I can guarantee there was no political strategies going along in my brain. For God's
strategy
sakes.
was staying alive.
I mean, my strategy was was trying to get out of bed and not wear the same pair of pants every day. So, but
and like you lacked attention. too at this time
I
as
mean,
well.
yeah. I want everybody, when say getting attention, being called crazy is not exactly at the top of my list. So, and it's people still people think it's fun. They think it's funny because I think they feel uncomfortable. I think they don't know what to do. That's what I choose to believe. If I could really go down that road, and I'm just not gonna. I think it's just people don't. So especially people that knew me for years, because my behavior did change a lot. I mean, I changed a lot, and because I was just trying to survive, and so I that's why I have really not any hard feelings, because I could understand, that. But I think it's their responsibility, or people's responsibility, to understand mental illness and try to be more understanding and gracious about it. And it's not until it happens maybe to one of their family members that people really start to understand, or to themselves. And then they think, wow, yeah.
We have that. We've encountered that with this wellness unit, as well as we've had a lot of officers that they're kind of, when we first built it, and we've heard it, they're quick to talk shit about the unit, and then they're showing up to this unit needing help. Yeah. And a lot of people, it's easy just to take a negative approach on something, as opposed to really realize that there is a problem. And mental health, I think there's stigmas in every profession when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, the stigma this is the big one.
Thick. Yeah.
It's thick. Yeah. And I mean, I try to talk about it, and we can talk. And, even when you hear, it's funny because we'll have Mental Health Awareness Month, and then you'll have someone make a comment about it. Then they make a joke about it at the end. Have you ever noticed it? Yeah. Like, oh, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, but I'm a little crazy. They always make a joke at the end, and it's always because it's just so uncomfortable.
And a lot of people that I know that say stuff like that, they're suffering the most.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone asked me not too long ago, they're like, how do you feel about people calling you all these names? And it's like, it took a long time. And what I realized, when you realize it has nothing to do with you. Yeah. I mean, but that took years to feel that way. I mean, that's not something that just happened to me. That was a lot of therapy and a lot of work within myself, just to say, okay, step back and realize this doesn't have to do with you, and you get to choose how you respond. So, I mean, when you can choose how you respond instead of just reacting, that's freedom. I mean, that's freedom to me.
And you do have control over that.
Yeah.
You have complete control over how you respond.
Isn't that Viktor Frankl that said that? Have you ever heard that quote talking about that moment between stimulus and response is where freedom lies, because you get to choose.
It took you a while to...
But that took a long time.
It took you a while.
A long time, yes.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
The journey it doesn't matter how long the journey is, as long as there's an improvement in getting better.
Yes.
And I was reading that article by Sharon about it. It was baby steps. Getting rid of the pant.
My drawstring.
My drawstring pants. Get rid of those.
She's like, if you walk, you can't come back through these doors without these pants on, because they are terrible. We were live mom the other day. I can still remember they were the most comfortable pants in the world, though, I will say.
And then Operation Kindness. Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah. So I don't have any kids. I'm a dog mom. I'm a very good dog mom, I will say. But she knew that about me, and she just said, you've got to leave the house and do something, because I wasn't doing anything. And the only movie theater I would go to I love to go see movies, but there was only one movie theater I would go to. Can you guess where?
The Angelica?
No. I went to Valley View Mall because it was shut down.
Gosh. Okay. Wow.
It is so far out of my way. But Valley View Mall. So my husband and I was like, that's the only place I'll go, because the mall shut down, and it's all, we'd have to buy tickets ahead of time. And I was like, I just do not want to see anybody that I know. So that was the only movie theater I went to. But then I just started going to walk dogs, and I was in that kind of, slowly but surely got me out of it. And then I eventually had found one of those dogs there to adopt and save. So
Dickens, about
Dickens, sweet Dickens. They'd already named him, by the way, but he was a dog that had been completely abused and lived in a run. And the run there, Operation Kindness, was adopted and brought back. Nobody wanted him. I would go to my therapist and talk about him and cry. And she's like, do you not see the correlation here of what we're talking about? I mean, come on. I mean, the dog you. I was like, well, he's just so sad. She's like, come on. Dig deep here. Realize what you're doing. So I adopted him, and he was so badly abused and just scared, and now he basically runs our house. So it's good. But I remember the first thing I thought of, I put him in my back seat, and The Tale of Two Cities just came into my head. Charles Dickens, and the best of times and the worst of times. I was like, okay, dude, we have seen the worst of the times. Let's see some good times together. And I'm just kind of helping him. That brought me out of myself. It just got me out of my rumination of myself, and just, dogs are the best. There's just nothing like it.
The most loyal, especially the ones that, like Dickens, that you basically saved, because then in turn you save yourself too.
I mean, it's that, what they say, they saved you, you saved them. I mean, it's true. And it's so true. So yeah, I always say I like dogs better than people, and everyone's like, don't say that. I'm like, but it's true.
Yeah. So looking back from when you started it in the mid-20s in Dallas DA's office, and then your outlook on anxiety and depression to what it is now. I mean, it's so much more education and understanding.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. When we started this podcast, that was one of the primary missions, was to educate people and talk about addressing mental health and awareness, therapies, just to get it out there. And I think we've surpassed what we set out to accomplish with this. And then and this story is just another example. And I wanted to have you on to talk about, we started way back to growing up in Arlington in 74, all the way up until now, because I wanted people to know, just not 2016 Susan Hawk.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Your life is, and like Danny says, it's so amazingly successful, and the challenges you did, and all the change that you, and all the lives that you helped, all those kids, and all the reform that you helped those people in the mental health court. It's commendable, and you should not be defined by.
Thank you.
That time.
Yeah, I'm doing criminal defense now, and I'm really excited about it. And I knew that I wanted to do it differently. I didn't want to be just like a high volume defense practice where I'm just going down there and pleading a bunch of people out to cases. And I know there's lawyers who do that, and I'm not disparaging them at all. But I'm saying, just I wanted to do it in a different way. And one of the first and foremost things when I do get new clients, and a lot of them have mental health issues and are charged with things, but it's like, we're going to treat everybody with respect that we come in contact in this criminal justice process down there. When we're the police officers, the bailiffs, the court, I think there just needs to be some humanity brought back to all of that, right? And realize that we all have a job to do, and we can all still do our job, but be professional and be kind and be empathetic along the way. And I think that if that approach is taken, I feel like, we can shift maybe the criminal justice system and start looking at it differently, as opposed to just warehousing people in the penitentiary because they're bad or we think they've done the wrong thing. Now, of course, there's individuals that need to be there. I understand that. But I tell every client that they're not, their case is just not a case to me, it's their life.
Can you talk about your practice?
Yes, I'd love to. I say I probably started slowly right when COVID happened, and it was just more of a referral based. And then I really, about a year and a half, it's called criminal law. And it's just me right now. And then actually my best friend from high school, she does my administrative stuff. And we've just, kind of got all the systems and processes in place. And then I've just kind of started going into the area of parole, which makes a lot of sense for what I do, because, I understand right when I get a case, the first thing I think of is, what would I want to see if I was the judge, and what would I want to know if I was the prosecutor? And I get all that information before the prosecution hopefully even gets the case, and I provide that to them, so they're not just reading a PC affidavit, arrest warrant of all these terrible things, I can show them that this is a human being. This is what he's done. This is what he's doing. And it really helps direct the outcome of the case. Also, I've tried a lot of cases. So if we need to go trial, we go trial. I haven't gone yet as a defense attorney, but I've been ready to go. But it's important to me. And I say, because I have so much respect for what you guys do. I mean, you put your lives out on the line every single day, first responders, all that. I mean, it's not like I continue that respectful process even through my investigation of a case. I mean, of course, if there are issues, I'm going to bring them to light, evidentiary issues. I think that's my job. But I just think there's a way that we can do this where it doesn't have to be so contentious, even though it is adversarial. But there is a way we can do it that we can respect one another.
And this is your new why.
It's my new why. Yeah, it is. I've had really good success with, I have, specializing in criminal defense, but, most of my clients have had mental health issues and just, helping the prosecution, and they've been great. Understand that this person, they are a person. This is not just another case, and go from there. So I'm excited about it.
And you probably have more empathy and compassion than ever before.
Oh, God. I mean, and I tell every one of them, look, I had my own issues. I've had my own problems. I mean, I suffered from these things, and I've gotten on the other side of it. Now, does it mean that I don't have to manage it every day, or I have some bad days, or, that life is always perfect? No. But I absolutely know if I can get on the other side of it, you can as well.
There is a light at the end of that tunnel.
Yes, absolutely.
I've got one question for you. What advice would you give somebody? What's worked for you the most?
Therapy. I absolutely believe. I think everybody should be in therapy. I mean, I think therapy's helped me a lot. Also, I am a believer in medication. I know some people are not. I think there are some brains that just need it, and if you're wired different, ways that it can help you, that I think that if you find a good psychiatrist, there's no reason to have to try so hard not to be depressed if there's something that can help you, or if you're anxiety. Also, I'm someone that used to go 1,000,000 miles a minute. I mean, from everything I did was extreme, from working, the kind of workouts I would do, the kind of, all the things I did. And I don't live like that anymore. I mean, I still exercise every day. And I think that is imperative, is, moving your body and doing that. But I also think there's something, especially in what y'all do, it's like when you're out on the streets, you get that rush, that dopamine dump, and then how you feel afterwards. There's something in taking time for stillness and kind of letting yourself, for me, this has helped. I've never done this before in my life until now, is just learning how to be still for a while and let my emotions, I have anxiety, big time. I have angst. And once I've learned that that's just kind of energy flowing through me, and it's not something that's going to kill me, and I just let it happen. It's amazing what that's done for me. That's all along the lines of meditation, but that's a new thing. So, I mean, we're talking years and years of me learning, trial and error on what's good and what works and what doesn't work. But that's a new thing that's helped me realize that this anxiety that I feel is not something that's going to, just take me back to that place where I, I'm going to get really sick and then not be able to, that it doesn't do that anymore. I realize it's just something that's flowing through me, and that it will pass.
So just figuring out that the brain, as powerful as it is, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not running properly, and the medication can absolutely assist with that. But the anxiety, man.
Yeah, that's a killer for me.
True anxiety is just a beat down.
And I explain it. I said, my depression feels like a wet blanket on my brain, and my anxiety feels like someone has me by the throat. And it's exactly how it feels like.
Yes.
And I mean, physically, that's how I feel. And I mean, I just have to really get somewhere and sit and learn how to breathe and acknowledge it and talk about it. And there is something, and I don't know if y'all ever read Brene Brown. I love her. Oh my gosh, I love her.
I've used some of her quotes for this episode, this show.
It's either, you do or not. I mean, this is vulnerable, right? Me coming in here and talking to you
100%.
guys about all this stuff. But, I walk out of here and it has no power over me anymore. None. And I had to learn that. I could, I could have stayed in my house for the rest of my life and never left, or moved to a different city or do something different. And, I even thought, someone said, why would you ever go down to the courthouse again? I mean, that place, why would you? And I was like, why wouldn't I? I mean, that's where I grew up. I mean, that's where I learned to be a lawyer and a judge and just a grown up.
But it couldn't have been easy.
I know it wasn't, I will say. And of course no, it wasn't. But I did it. First couple times I did it. And and then each time now I walk in there and I try to really like remember that love, that feeling, and take that with me. And if, people say snide comments, things like that, someone asked me if they do that. I don't know. If they do, that's on them. That's their problem. They're projecting something else on that I have nothing to do with. So, but for the most part, people have been super kind to me. Really, honestly, they have. So.
Love it. I want to talk about you going into prisons. You were talking to me offline about this. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I had this opportunity recently, and I know Damon West has been on the show, right?
Yep. So right here.
Yeah. And we just kind of randomly, I sent a LinkedIn connection because I love second chance stories. I mean, when someone's doing something good after a terrible situation, I'm all in. And so I just read about it and I just said, connect. I just learned how to use LinkedIn, by the way. I just literally learned how to like something a month ago. So I am not social media savvy. So I just sent a connect, and then
probably a good thing.
Yeah. He sent a message back. Do you remember me? And I said, I have no idea. And then he sent me like pages of his book, The Change Agent, and evidently I was in it. And I had no idea that had happened. So we just communicated, became friends. He told me about the coffee bean message. I listened to it. And then I read his book, or listened to, I'm an Audible book listener, listened to his book. And then he does this coffee bean curriculum in the prison and asked me to come speak at their graduation. So I was like, of course I will. I'd love to. And plus I think I wish I would have gone into that and done something like that as a DA and as a judge, just so I can have more information. I think the more perspectives I have, the better I am at my job. So just getting that perspective was definitely going to make me better at my job. So we went down to one of the units, the Plinsky unit. We were with the director of programming, Chris Carter, and spoke to one of the groups. And then I was on the Tank, the podcast there that goes to their tablets, and then spoke at they had the graduation that afternoon, and I spoke. So it was a big day, but it was interesting to me. I was like, and then now I'm coming to do your podcast this week. And just, what I talked about was just not giving up, just asking for help if you need it. Talked about mental health issues, not giving up on hope. I hear you have these guys, they're serving life sentences, and they're in there still they're bettering themselves through rehabilitation programs. So I'm a believer in all that. I'm a believer in programming. So anything like that is going to be something that I'm all interested in. So
is it therapeutic for you to talk about it?
Yes. If I can just help somebody, it makes it worth it. So yeah. I
can see a Hawk Chronicle podcast coming up.
Oh, God.
You started. We'll gladly help get that going for you.
How about I just come be part of your little posse? Yeah, I like it here.
Yeah, you can come back on if you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
As we get ready to close up here, are there any people that you want to acknowledge throughout your life?
First and foremost, I just want to thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for doing a show like this and educating the public about what you do and how hard it is for the police and first responders, and the things that you go through, talking about secondary trauma and how this, now that the DPD has a place where people can get help and how important that is. You keep us safe. You have the most important job out there, and I just want to thank you. Of course, my family that have been there for me, and there are, and I know y'all know Terry Hill, who's been on the program, and she's one of the very first people that reached out to me when I'd resigned, and she's been there for me the entire time. She's one of my favorite people in the world, and I've had have really good friends that I've that have been there to support me. One of my best friends from high school now works with me, Stacy Houston. I have to acknowledge her because she gets me organized and she's good at all the things that I'm not good at. And as far as the business side of starting a practice. And, I was really lucky along the way, too, that I've had good lawyers that I was able to watch and see that gave me great advice. Just to name a few, Dan Haygood, Reed Prosper. There's been several along the way that have just given me good side on both sides as a criminal defense attorney and as a prosecutor. Learning. Judge Lena Myers was one of the judges I respected so much. And then another judge who was a justice is Judge Molly Francis. I was in her court as a prosecutor for 5.5 years, and I got to watch to see what it meant to be a really good judge. So being in her presence definitely helped me, and especially when I was on the bench. But, and of course, my husband, who's been there with me throughout this whole process. We actually have been married twice, so that's some interesting information. So I always say he loved me enough to marry me twice, and he's been there with me through especially these last 6 or 7 years, and supportive of me starting my own practice and going forward.
It definitely takes a village.
Yes, and I will say that it does. And I have and also for those of you that are questioning whether you should get a therapist or a psychiatrist, I can't tell you how important I think that is to have both if you are suffering and on medication that work together, and someone that you can trust and talk to. And if you are on medication that doesn't work or you're in a situation, there's plenty of them out there. So just keep trying and don't give up.
Sound advice.
Yeah.
Susan, as we wrap this up, I'm going to kind of end with what I began this episode with talking about the famous President Roosevelt quote in speech,
yeah.
The man in the arena. Can you tell the listener why that resonates with you so much?
I love that speech. And actually, I listened to it on the way here before I got here. Every time I speak, I listen to it. If you ever pull it up on YouTube and you can listen, I don't know if it's his voice. There's another serendipitous thing about that quote. I had no idea because I have been reading that quote for years now, but he actually gave it on April 23rd, 1911, I believe. And my dad passed on April 23rd. And my dad probably was my biggest fan and my biggest supporter. He's the one that always told me that I was smart out of my family. I think he might have been the only one. I'm just kidding. But he was the one that really encouraged me. And he always told me I could be whatever I wanted to be. So the fact that speech was done on the day that he passed is very symbolic to me. When you read that quote, and I have it on my phone actually, but my version on my phone says the woman in the arena. It could be the man in the arena, but I know what it feels like to be face down. Just the way they describe that is dust, blood, sweat, just marred face down. And also I have felt the highest of achievements. And, I always talk about people that are in the cheap seats in the arena that are sneering and the cynics, that those are the folks you have to ignore. Unless you've been in the arena and know what it feels like, those are the people you listen to. And there's something about it to me that is so inspiring, and it just keeps me going when I want to give up, because, when you think about doing things in this world that are worthwhile and helping other people that are just fulfilling, that matter, you're going to be in the arena, and you're going to be smack dab right in the arena. And sometimes the results might not be what you want them to be, but at least you tried.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up. shoulder. Together we'll run up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.